She called him friend when she handed him his coffee. Just one word. But he hadn't heard anyone call him that in 3 years. The rain hammered against the windows of the small coffee shop. Inside, fluorescent lights flickered like dying stars. He sat in the corner, invisible, forgotten, exactly how he wanted it. His laptop screen glowed with unwritten words. Another blank page. Another day of silence from the mind that once created worlds millions had loved. You know that feeling when success becomes your prison? When everyone knows your name but nobody knows your pain? That was him. Awards on shelves, books in 40 languages, and a heart so empty it echoed. The barista was new, young, maybe 22. She moved between tables like she was dancing to, music only she could hear. Her smile wasn't fake like the others. It reached her eyes, made them crinkle at the corners. She didn't know who he was. Didn't recognize the face that used to grace magazine covers. Your usual friend? She asked the next day. Friend. There it was again. Not sir, not customer. Friend. He nodded, unable to speak. When was the last time someone had called him friend without wanting something, without seeing dollar signs, without calculating what knowing him could do for their career? She drew a smiley face on his cup. Childish. Simple. But when he saw it, something cracked inside him. A wall he'd built brick by brick after his wife left, after his publisher dropped him, after the world moved on to the next big thing. Days turned into weeks. Every morning the same ritual, the same corner table, the same blank screen. But now, there was her voice. Morning, friend, the usual. And that word began to fill spaces he thought would stay empty forever. You think you know loneliness? Real loneliness isn't being alone. It's being surrounded by people who only see what you can do for them. It's having 1,000 contacts but no one to call at 3 a.m. when the darkness gets too heavy. It's success without soul, fame without family, money without meaning. He started arriving earlier, staying later. Not to write. The words still wouldn't come. But to exist in a space where someone saw him as just another human being needing caffeine and kindness. Where his greatest achievement was remembering to say thank you. Where his identity wasn't tied to book sales and review scores. She had no idea she was saving a life with foam art and friendship. Every morning, a new design, a heart, a leaf. Once, hilariously, what might have been a cat, but looked more like a blob with whiskers. The other customers rushed through, grabbed their drinks, checked their phones, raced to jobs that would forget them the moment they retired. But she treated each interaction like it mattered, like that 30-second exchange could change someone's day. And for him, it did. You see someone every day and you start to notice things. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear when concentrating, how she hummed old jazz standards while cleaning tables, the slight limp she tried to hide, an old injury, maybe from dancing, maybe from dreams that didn't quite land right. He wanted to ask her name. Wanted to know her story, but fear kept him silent. What if she Googled him? What if she discovered he was Marcus Webb, former literary darling, current cautionary tale? What if friend became sir, or worse, nothing at all? So he kept his distance. Watched her brightness from the shadows of his corner. Let her small kindnesses accumulate like snow, covering the bare ground of his existence with something clean and white and hopeful. Then came the day she wasn't there. The coffee tasted different. Wrong. The replacement barista was efficient, professional, forgettable. No friend, no foam art, no humming, just transaction without transformation. He told himself it didn't matter. People leave jobs. Life moves on. But his chest tightened with a familiar panic. Another person gone. Another. Light extinguished. The blank page on his laptop seemed to mock him. Still no words. Still no story worth telling. She was gone for a week. 7 days that felt like 7 years. He almost stopped coming. Almost retreated back to his apartment where silence was at least predictable, where loneliness didn't wear the mask of hope. But habit is stronger than fear. So he kept returning, kept ordering the same drink from baristas who didn't see him, kept staring at the cursor blinking on empty white space, kept wondering if kindness was just another thing that eventually disappeared. On the 8th day, she was back. Thinner. Shadows under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. But that smile, that impossible, invincible smile, still intact. "I missed you, friend," she said, already preparing his usual. "This place isn't the same without my favorite customer." Favorite customer. Him. The man who barely spoke, who tipped well but never engaged, who brought darkness into her kingdom of light. How was he anyone's favorite anything? Truth has a way of revealing itself in the smallest gestures, the way someone holds a cup, the rhythm of their breathing, the space they leave between themselves and the world. She started sitting with him during her breaks, just for a few minutes, never pushing conversation, simply existing in the same space. Two humans sharing silence that somehow said more than words. "You're a writer," she said one day. Not a question, an observation. "I can tell by how you look at people, like you're reading their stories." His hands trembled. The secret was out, but she didn't press. Didn't ask for titles or genres or why he spent 8 hours a day staring at nothing. She just nodded, like she understood something he hadn't said. "You want to know what breaks a writer? It's not bad reviews. It's not poor sales. It's when the voice inside goes quiet, when the character stops speaking, when every word feels like a lie and every sentence like a betrayal of who you used to be." "I used to dance," she offered in exchange. "Ballet. Was going to be principal dancer at Lincoln Center. Then," she gestured vaguely at her leg. "Life. Had other plans. 2 dreams deferred. 2 souls derailed." Sitting in a coffee shop that smelled like possibility and disappointment in equal measure. He wanted to tell her she still moved like a dancer. That grace wasn't something you lost. It just transformed. Instead, he said, "I'm Marcus." First real words beyond, "thank you," and the usual. His name hung in the air between them, waiting to see if recognition would dawn, if everything would change. She smiled, extended her hand. "Sarah. Nice to officially meet you, friend." Friend. Still friend. Even with a name attached. Even with the first layer of anonymity peeled away. Maybe she didn't know who Marcus Webb was. Or maybe, and this thought struck him like lightning, maybe she didn't care. The next day, she brought him a book. Not one of his. Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky. Worn pages. Margin notes in pencil. "My favorite," she said. About falling and getting back up. About redemption being possible even when you think you've gone too far. He accepted it like communion. When she walked away, he opened it, on the inside cover, in faded blue ink. "For Sarah, who dances even when the music stops. Love, Mom. How do you hold someone else's sacred thing? How do you accept trust you haven't earned? How do you believe in redemption when you've been writing your own ending in invisible ink?" He started reading at night. Sarah's mother's words in the margins became conversation. Comments like "yes" and "remember this" and "we all carry this weight" turned reading into dialogue, into connection across time and space and sorrow. The book was heavy with more than pages. It carried years of hands holding it. Tears probably. Definitely love. The spine was broken in 3 places. Favorite passages returned to again and again until the book naturally fell open to them. You know what changes a person? Not grand gestures, not life-altering events, but accumulation, small kindnesses, stacking up like stones until suddenly you've built something, maybe not a castle, but at least a shelter from the storm. His laptop started displaying words, not many, sometimes just a sentence, sometimes a paragraph, but the cursor no longer blinked at emptiness. Sarah never asked what he was writing, never, peered over his shoulder, just smiled when she heard the keys clicking like she knew something was thawing. "My mom would have liked you," she said one day, wiping down his table. She believed broken things had the most beautiful stories. Broken things, is that what they were? Two broken things finding each other in the wreckage? Or was it more? Was it two people discovering that cracks are how the light gets in? He wanted to tell her about his wife, about coming home to an empty house and a note that said, "I can't compete with characters who will never disappoint you." About spending the next year trying to write her back into his story, about failing. He wanted to tell her about the critics who called his last book a shadow of former greatness, about his agent suggesting he try writing under a pseudonym, about the fan letters that stopped coming, about success being the heaviest thing to carry when you're carrying it alone. Instead, he said, "Your mom sounds wise." "She was," Sarah replied. "Taught me that everybody's fighting something. That kindness isn't extra credit. It's the whole assignment. The whole assignment. What if life really was that simple? What if all the complicated narratives we construct are just ways to avoid the basic truth? That we're here to help each other through, to call strangers friend until they believe it, to draw hearts in foam because someone needs to know they're seen." That night, he wrote 3 pages. The story of a barista who didn't know she was an angel, who thought she was serving coffee but was actually serving salvation. One cup at a time, one smile at a time, one friend at a time. The coffee shop became his universe. 8 tables, 1 counter, infinite possibilities for human connection, played out in small dramas. The businessman who always looked like he was about to cry, the student who fell asleep over textbooks, the elderly woman who ordered tea but really came for conversation. Sarah knew them all. Not just their orders, their stories, their struggles. She remembered that the businessman's daughter was sick, that the student was first-generation college, that the elderly woman had just lost her husband of 60 years. You think you know what matters? Watch someone who treats everyone like they matter. Watch how the world reorganizes itself around that kind of gravity. How cynicism melts, how hope multiplies, how the ordinary becomes sacred. "Why do you care so much?" he asked her one day. The question escaped before he could stop it. Before he could worry, it was too personal, too revealing of his own inability to care about anything beyond his emptiness. She paused in her cleaning, really looked at him. "Because someone cared about me when I couldn't care about myself, when I thought the only thing I was good for was gone. This," she gestured around the shop, "this is my stage now. Different audience, same performance, making people feel something. Even if it's just that their coffee matters, that they matter. Making people feel something. Wasn't that what he used to do? With words instead of foam art? With stories instead of smiles? When had he forgotten that the point wasn't the reviews or the sales, but the connection? The moment when a reader felt less alone because someone had written their truth. That afternoon, he wrote about dancing, about stages that change, but performances that continue, about finding new ways to move when the old ways are taken, about Sarah teaching him that grace isn't about perfection but about persistence. She brought him a second book the next week, The Little Prince, even more worn than the Dostoevsky, pages soft as cloth from handling. "For when you forget that, what's essential is invisible to the eye," she said. Inside cover. "For my little prince who sees with her heart. Happy 8th birthday. Love, Dad." He held it like spun glass. "I can't. This is too personal?" She smiled. "That's the point. The best stories are. Besides, books are meant to be shared, like pain, like joy, like friendship. Friendship." There was that word again, but now it felt different, felt earned, felt real, like something you could build a story on, maybe even build a life on. He learned her patterns like punctuation, how she arrived 15 minutes early to set up the space with intention, how she knew which customers needed chatter and which needed quiet, how she slipped extra shots into drinks for people having hard days. Small rebellions against corporate policy, tiny revolutions of compassion. She probably spent half her tips covering the extra coffee she gave away. But watching her, he understood something he'd forgotten. Generosity isn't about having extra. It's about sharing what you can't spare. You know what poverty really is? It's not empty pockets. It's an empty heart. It's having everything and feeling nothing. It's winning awards while losing yourself. He'd been poor for years without knowing it. Rich in all the wrong currencies. I used to read your books, and she said one day. Casual, like mentioning the weather. His blood froze. The moment he'd dreaded, the end of anonymity, the beginning of performance. But she continued working. Didn't look at him with that expression he knew so well, the one that said, "You used to be something." Instead, she said, "The mirror's edge got me through my surgery. The part about scars being maps of where we've been, not predictions of where we're going." She'd known all along, had recognized him from day one, and still called him friend. Still sat with him. Still shared her mother's books. The revelation hit him like a physical blow. She'd seen him at his lowest and chosen kindness anyway. "Why didn't you say anything?" His voice cracked like a teenager's. "Because you weren't ready to be Marcus Webb here. You needed to just be Marcus. My friend who drinks too much coffee and thinks too much about life." She finally looked at him. "We all need spaces where we can just be human." Human. When was the last time he'd felt simply human? Not a success or a failure. Not a could have been or a used to be. Just a person drinking coffee and slowly remembering how to feel. That night he wrote 10 pages. About masks we wear and the people who see through them. About kindness that knows but doesn't demand. About friendship that accepts the whole person. The glory and the grief, the triumph and the truncation. "I stopped writing," he admitted the next day. "After the divorce. After the last book flopped. Just stopped. Like you're dancing." "No," she said firmly. "Not like my dancing. My body betrayed me. Your gift didn't betray you. You betrayed it. There's a difference." The truth of it stung, but clean pain, like antiseptic on a wound, necessary for healing. She was right, of course. The gift was still there, waiting, patient as a loyal dog. He'd been the one to walk away, to decide that if he couldn't write bestsellers, he wouldn't write at all. Pride disguised as grief. Ego dressed as injury. The pages accumulated. Not a novel. Not yet. But character sketches. Of Sarah. Of the businessman whose daughter turned out to have leukemia. Of the student who was working 3 jobs. Of the elderly woman who still set 2 cups at her table out of habit. You want to know where stories come from? They come from paying attention. From seeing the extraordinary in the ordinary. From recognizing that everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle. From understanding that the smallest gestures can be the greatest gifts. "Read me something," Sarah said one day. Bold, direct, dancing on a different stage. His hands shook. Reading, aloud, was intimacy, was vulnerability, was admitting the words mattered enough to share. But she'd shared her mother's books, her father's inscription, her own broken dreams. How could he offer less? So he read. A paragraph about foam art being modern hieroglyphics, about baristas being unnamed therapists, about coffee shops being churches for people who've lost faith but not hope. She listened with her whole body, leaning in, eyes closed, like the words were music and she was finding the rhythm. When he finished, she was quiet for so long he thought he'd failed. Again. Then, "That's it. That's the thing I've been trying to say but didn't have words for." Tears on her cheeks. "We're all just trying to feel less alone, and sometimes a cup of coffee is communion. Sometimes friend is a prayer," he wrote feverishly after that. Stories pouring out like water through a broken dam. Not about dramatic events or extraordinary people, about Sarah dancing between tables, about the businessman finally crying, about the student graduating, about the elderly woman finding new friends to share tea with. Small stories, quiet stories, the kind critics would call slight or domestic, but true stories, human stories. The kind that reminded him why he'd started writing in the first place. Not for fame or fortune, but for connection. For the magic moment when a reader sees themselves reflected and realizes they're not alone. "I'm writing again," he told her, formally, like an announcement, like something that needed witnessing. "I know," she smiled. "I can see it in your eyes. They're alive again. Alive. Yes, that's what it felt like. Resurrection. Not dramatic, not sudden, but gradual. Like spring coming, one green shoot at a time." The seasons changed around them. Summer's heat gave way to autumn's honesty. Leaves fell like pages from a story nature was editing. The coffee shop grew busier as people sought warmth, but their corner remained constant. A sanctuary within a sanctuary. He finished a story. Beginning, middle, end. 15 pages about a dancer who found new stages. About art transforming but never dying. About grace being a choice, not a gift. He printed it at the library. Held, the pages like a newborn. Fragile. Perfect. Terrifying. You know what courage really is? It's not absence of fear. It's feeling the fear and moving forward anyway. It's knowing you might fail again but choosing to try. It's believing that the attempt matters more than the outcome. "Will you read it?" He slid the pages across to her during her break. It's about you. Kind of. Or inspired by. Or Marcus." She put her hand over his, first time they'd touched beyond accidental brushes. "I'd be honored." She took the pages home. He spent the night catastrophizing. What if she hated it? What if he'd gotten her story wrong? What if he'd revealed too much of his own longing? What if the words that felt like resurrection to him felt like exploitation to her? The next morning she wasn't there. His usual was waiting. The replacement barista said she'd come in early just to make it. But no Sarah. No verdict. No validation. Or condemnation. Just absence and imagination running wild. She appeared at lunch. Eyes red, clutching the pages. He braced for impact, for anger, for disappointment, for another person to tell him his words weren't enough. Instead, she hugged him. Full body. No hesitation. Like dancers do, like friends do, like people who've seen each other's scars do. "Thank you," she whispered, "for seeing me, for making my small stage feel like Lincoln Center." They held each other in the middle of the coffee shop. Two broken people who'd found wholeness in the sharing. Customers stared. Some smiled. The businessman actually applauded. But Marcus and Sarah were beyond caring about audiences. They'd found something rarer than fame or success. They'd found understanding. "Submit it," she said, pulling back. "To magazines, to contests, to anyone who'll read it. It's just a small story. There are no small stories, only small views of big truths. Submit it." So he did, that afternoon, to 3 literary magazines, ones that paid in copies, not cash, ones that cared about craft, not celebrity, ones where Marcus Webb meant nothing but good writing meant everything. The rejections came quickly. Form letters. "Not right for us. Try again. Good luck placing this elsewhere." Each one a small death, each one confirming what he'd feared. That maybe the critics were right. Maybe he was a shadow of former greatness. Sarah found him staring at his laptop. 3 rejection emails open like wounds. She read over his shoulder, shrugged. "So, you know what my first dance teacher told me? Fall 7 times, stand 8. You've fallen 3 times, 5 more to go before you even need to count. You think you understand resilience? Watch someone who's lost everything rebuild with nothing but will. Watch them face rejection like weather, unpleasant but temporary. Watch them teach you that failure isn't falling. It's staying down." She brought him stories of famous rejections. 12 publishers turned down Harry Potter. Carrie was thrown in the trash before King's wife rescued it. The help was rejected 60 times. "You're in good company," she said. "The best company. The company of people who didn't quit." He submitted again. Different magazines. Same story. Because it was true. Because it mattered. Because Sarah believed in it. Because he was starting to believe again, too. The coffee shop became his office, his church, his therapy. Writing in the morning, submitting in the afternoon. Watching Sarah turn strangers into friends in between. Learning that success wasn't about reaching millions. It was about reaching one person who needed your words. Then came the email. Not a rejection. Not quite an acceptance. We love this piece but feel it needs expansion. Would you consider turning it into a series? 6 stories about ordinary grace? We can offer a small advance and publication in our spring issue. A small advance. From a small magazine. For a small story that apparently wasn't so small after all. He showed Sarah. Watched her face light up like Christmas morning. Watched her actually dance between the tables, bad leg and all. You did it, she laughed. You're back. But he wasn't back. Not really. He was somewhere new. Somewhere better. Marcus Webb. The literary sensation was gone. In his place stood Marcus the human. Marcus the friend. Marcus who wrote small stories. About big truths. That night they celebrated with coffee and day-old pastries. The businessman bought a round for the whole shop when he heard. The student offered to proofread. The elderly woman said her book club would love to read them. A community celebrating one of their own. Because that's what Marcus had become. Not a customer. Not a celebrity. But one of their own. He wrote the 6 stories in a fever. Each one about someone from the coffee shop. The businessman learning to cry saved his marriage. The student discovering that first generation didn't mean less than. The elderly woman finding that endings could also be beginnings. And through them all Sarah, dancing on her different stage, teaching grace by example. Winter came hard that year, snow like silence, cold that made the coffee shop windows fog with collective breath, but inside was warmth, community, stories being lived and told and retold. The sacred disguised as the ordinary. You know what makes a place holy? Not the architecture, not the ritual, but the intention. The decision that here, in this space, we'll see each other, we'll care, we'll call strangers friend until the word becomes truth. Sarah started a reading series. Tuesday nights. Local writers sharing work. Mostly terrible. All brave. Marcus read on the 3rd Tuesday. Not the published pieces, but something new. About finding home in unexpected places. About family you choose. About resurrection requiring witnesses. That's about us, the businessman said after. All of us. Yes, it was. Because that's what they'd become. A story, a family, a testimony to the power of small kindnesses to create big changes. Marcus had come seeking silence and found symphony. Seeking isolation and found integration. The magazine came out in March. His name small on the cover. The stories smaller inside. But there, real, tangible. Proof that death wasn't always permanent. That writers could be reborn. That dancers could find new stages. Sarah framed the first page. Hung it behind the counter. Right next to the health department certificate and the employee of the month photos. Like it belonged there. Like it was, part of the coffee shop's story now. Which it was. Orders trickled in. Not bestseller numbers, but readers. Real readers who wrote to say the stories mattered. Who recognized themselves in the characters. Who felt less alone. One letter from a dancer who'd lost her legs in Afghanistan. Another from a writer who'd been blocked for a decade. All saying the same thing. Thank you for showing that broken doesn't mean worthless. You did that, Sarah said, reading the letters during a slow afternoon. You gave them permission to try again. We did that, Marcus corrected. You taught me first. I just wrote it down. Partnership, collaboration. The realization that no story is written alone. That every writer needs a reader. Every dancer needs an audience. Every human needs another human to say, I see you, you matter, keep going. Spring arrived like punctuation. Periods of rain, commas of sunshine, the exclamation points of first flowers. Marcus had a routine now. Writing from 6 to noon. Coffee shop from noon to close. Home to read Sarah's books, to sleep, to dream in stories instead of silence. The advance was small, but enough. Enough to pay rent, enough to stop the spiral, enough to believe that words could still be currency, that stories could still be sustenance, that the thing he loved could love him back. You want to know what success really looks like? It's not red carpets or bestseller lists. It's sustainable. It's waking up with purpose. It's having work that matters and people who care. It's building something small but solid, something storms can't topple. Sarah started talking about the future, about maybe managing the shop one day, about creating more than just coffee, about making it a real community space. Poetry readings, art shows, dance performances in the small space between tables. My new stage, she said. Our new stage. Our. The word that changed everything. The recognition that they were building something together, not romance, something deeper. Partnership in the truest sense. Two people who'd saved each other, saving others. Ripples in a pond, circles expanding. Marcus started a novel about a coffee shop that healed people, about the barista who was secretly an angel, about the writer who learned that the best stories are lived before they're written, about community being the only wealth that matters. He wrote it openly now, no longer hiding in the corner. Customers would read over his shoulder, offer suggestions, share their own stories. The novel became communal, everyone adding threads, everyone part of the tapestry. This is it, Sarah said one day, reading the latest chapter. This is the one, the story that brings you all the way back. But Marcus shook his head. I don't want to go back. Back was lonely. Back was empty. This, forward, this is better. Forward, where Sarah danced badly, but bravely. Where the businessman had learned to feel. Where the student had graduated with honors. Where the elderly woman led the Tuesday readings now. Where Marcus wrote stories that mattered more than they sold. Where success was measured in connections, not copies. The novel grew, not toward an ending but toward a beginning, because that's what every good story is. Not a destination but a door, not a conclusion but an invitation. Come in, see yourself, remember that you're not alone, remember that broken can be beautiful, remember that there's always another chapter. On a random Tuesday that felt like destiny, Sarah handed him his usual. The foam art was different, letters, shaky but clear. Thank you. He looked up. She was crying. Good tears, the kind that water growth. My dad's coming to visit, she said. First time since the accident. I've been too ashamed, failed dancer serving coffee, but your stories, they made me see. This isn't failure. It's evolution. I'm still performing, still making people feel, still dancing, just differently. You know what redemption looks like? It's a father seeing his daughter shine in a coffee shop instead of on stage. It's a writer finding voice in community instead of isolation. It's broken people discovering they're actually breaking open, like seeds, like spring, like stories that refuse to end. The father came, tall, elegant, dancer's posture even in his 70s. He watched Sarah work, watched her transform ordinary moments into art, watched customers light up when she called them friend, watched his daughter dance between tables with a grace that transcended physical limitation. She gets it from you, Marcus told him. The ability to make people feel seen. The father smiled. No, I had technique. She has heart. That's rarer. That's what lasts. What lasts? In the end, isn't that the only question? What remains when the applause fades? When the reviews are forgotten? When the body betrays or the mind goes quiet? What lasts is impact, connection. The moment when someone calls you friend and means it. The story that helps someone else write their own. The dance that happens in hearts even when legs fail. Marcus's novel found a publisher. Small, independent, perfect. They loved that it was written in public, that it belonged to a community, that it proved stories were living things breathing through multiple lungs, beating with collective hearts. The launch party was at the coffee shop. Of course, where else could it be? Sarah made special drinks, named after characters. The businessman gave a toast about stories saving lives by teaching us to feel. The student, now in graduate school, read her favorite passage. The elderly woman led the gathering in raising cups to the stories we live and the people who witness them. But the moment that mattered most was quiet. After the crowd left, just Marcus and Sarah cleaning up, working in comfortable silence. The kind of silence that comes after noise. That comes from completion. That comes from knowing you've built something worth building. "We did it," Sarah said. Not about the book, about everything, about resurrection, about finding new stages, about discovering that success isn't about reaching the top, but about lifting others as you climb, about learning that the smallest kindnesses, a word, a smile, a cup of coffee, can be someone's salvation. What if your entire life could change because a stranger called you friend? What if rock bottom was actually solid ground to build on? What if every ending was secretly a beginning wearing a disguise? What if the story you're living right now is exactly the one someone else needs to hear? You have that power. To call someone friend, to see past their silence to their struggle, to offer small kindnesses that become big changes, to dance on whatever stage life gives you, to write stories with your life that help others write theirs. Look around. Who needs you to see them today? Who's sitting in their corner, laptop open, to emptiness, waiting for someone to remind them they matter? Who's dancing through pain, serving others while bleeding inside? Who's wearing success like armor while dying of loneliness? Be someone's Sarah. Call them friend until they believe it. Show them that broken doesn't mean worthless, that falling isn't failing unless you stay down, that everyone has a story worth telling, worth living, worth sharing. Because here's the secret Marcus learned in that coffee shop. We're all writing the same story. The story of humans helping humans, of reaching across the darkness to find another hand reaching back, of building community one cup at a time, of discovering that the only real success is helping someone else succeed. Your coffee shop is waiting. Your Sarah is out there. Your story is unfolding right now. Don't wait for the perfect moment or the right words or the healed wounds. Start now, with what you have, where you are. Call someone friend. Share your broken places. Dance on your different stage. The world needs your story. The one where you fell and got back up, where you found beauty in the ordinary, where you discovered that the smallest acts of kindness can change everything, where you learned that we're all just walking each other home. Like the video, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. This channel is for those who believe in the power of small acts to change lives.